Thank you so much. I'm excited to share a cycle of poems titled Lechse Noch, and the glossary is published alongside the text, which I think is a really great way to access this text, as it does contain frameworks from various cultural perspectives. Really big into like history of terms and defining terms. And so Lechse Noch means to thirst for or to yearn after. It's a Yiddish phrase. And the first poem is titled Shabbos Bride for Shabbos Queen. The sixth day turns and the sun dips low, sanctifying each mushroom. I race the waning light through your forest, O Malka, O Queen. You retell each day of the week, how you converse with the rosemary with the soil with the dead with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, petitioning to guide me here, this fragrant field, where tall grasses hide the roses I drop at your feet. Among the goldenrod, I know I've arrived when you spoon honey in my mouth. You banish the scarcity of time. And it was morning, oak bedposts and unscrolling, field and gaze, wind palming cheeks like coins unspent, trailing fingers over dried milkweed husks. Left undisturbed, the day tilts, my cup overflows. Already, the rising moon's reflection becomes a bath for braided flame. I cling as you recite Tchinas, my arms wrapped around your shoulders. You bow and bend, shuckling like a willow. I would be your lulav if you let me, I whisper into your braids. Yet you end your supplications with a bracha for my journey. I bless you with a backwards glance, your long dress full of pockets, deep pockets full of nettles, dry nettles full of dust. Tahara. Teeth chattering in Kislev's cold, I begin to undress for bed, but tangle. My Shabbos bride approaches from behind, draws the white cloth over my head. She wraps her arms around my shoulders. There she rocks me. Grief waxes in my chest like a moon, which is to say a calendar. I want to shake my mother's yahrzeit out of the sky, and I try to say, I have not been moved in so long, but my teeth turn pebble. Poo-poo. She bends down to the floorboards, pockets these tiny omens. I rest by your parents' graves on my journey home each week, she explained. I had not known. You are not a graveyard, you are a mikveh. She sticks a finger in my mouth. The greasy chicken bone legs of my house shake when she withdraws tahor. Muksa prayer. I go out into the field to greet my bride, who doesn't show. Mercury glows. Maybe she left late. Maybe she didn't make it in time, attacked by bandits, quicksand, lost track of time. Maybe she left, maybe bandits stole my heart and ran away with the dough after months of braiding our limbs together. The lack flattens me out. What if I can't rise from my bed without her? The second week she doesn't come. I queer another mitzvah, that is to say, perform my electric Shabbos prayer upon the bima of my bed, grasp full fists of sheets, my muksa yearning ascends on high. And last is Song of the Ziz. Quote, in the month of Tishrei, at the time of the autumnal equinox, the great bird Ziz flaps his wings and utters his cry, so that the birds of prey, the eagles and the vultures, blench, and they fear to swoop down upon the tame animals and annihilate them in their greed. Also, quote, Ziz is a delicacy to be served to the pious at the end of time. These are from Rabbi Louis Ginsburg in Legends of the Jews, published in 1909. And then from the Sefaria Community's translation of Lechado Di, Shlomo Halevi's Alkabetz's 16th century liturgical poem, we have, quote, arise, escape from the midst of the chaos, end quote, and far distant will be those who would devour you, end quote. You forest floored me, Malka. Remove the hunter's snare, cleave to scaly foot mine. A tiny winged me captivated in your cupped hands. I gazed up at your moon face, staring into your nostrils, yearning to pluck moon hairs and weave a delicate blanket for your thumb stroking my head. All week you spoon nettle stew down my beak. You told me to find love you must be open to it. I held my wings close, as if to foil is to pray. I plotted to heal, to hunt for beads, to drop them in your pockets, to sing to you in every evening song, a bone broth song for forest lovers, for love found like a yellow leaf caught in a boiling pot. By late Friday afternoon, my heart knew something good was brewing, and not just on the stove. You stirred as you sang, I must prepare to greet my bride. The sun slipped in the sky. You placed me in the shoebox by the windowsill, Neshika to my forehead. Then you left. I watched you gather the garden into a fistful of herbs. You ran towards the sun, sinking into the forest, and the moon rose eagerly, and your candles burned to two blue flickers, and those flickers circled in the sconce, and just when their dance flamed bright, they disappeared, and still you did not return. Once I was a great bird, putting dreamers to shame with my wingspan. I only meant to leave a lover mean like winter, fly home before the ground froze. Instead, I shrunk so small when you found me, a mere hunter's catch, as if all I needed were soup and time, diminutive me, and you. On the fifth repetition of this doodle, when I wished I had more to loan you, more to shake out of my bones than in every evening song, the door swung open to laughter. Two brides embraced in the threshold, adorned with fragrant crowns of rosemary and roses, sage and goldenrod. You touched me like a muxafegla, only to feed and water, shushing when I asked where you'd been. 1 week you returned alone, said nothing to me. No brides, no songs. All summer I bittered, plotting how I would care for you, bring you shiny beads, tuck your hair behind your ear with my pointy beak. That Shabbos bride, who are they to come and leave? Who are they? Must be better, more full of blood, more meat, more bones. What if all I am is bones? What if all you want is meat? I stew. Last Thursday you said, why don't you sing for me, little bird? I asked you, will I be stuck so small in your life? I did not ask, do you love me? You went back to braiding challah. At the head of the year, I dreamt of my mother who said, you must argue. For the sake of heaven, she said, for the sake of getting to the bottom of what is bothering you. Dig up your buried, tangled kishkas. You've ignored them for far too long. Once I was a wild beast, putting wingspans to shame with my dreams. Motzei Shabbos, I peck at the window till it shatters. A beshert will cup their hands around yours as you cradle slimy guts. I pull my wings from within the chaos, leave a trail to measure the growing distance from those who would devour me, and in my freedom, I blot out the stars.
Thank you, thank you. When we're like going through this poem for like, you know, acceptance, one of the editors like made a noise that sounded like a bark out of appreciation. Like I don't remember how it actually went, but I was like, did you just bark? And Annalena Rose was like, yes, out of appreciation for this poem because I love it so much. Um, so yeah, we really love this one. And okay, so the first question I have for you is about craft. Your pieces span across a journey of emotions at different snapshots of a relationship, and you also called it a cycle of poems. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the crafting process for them.
Yeah, so one of the questions that was really driving me in various revisions was what are various versions of queer yearning, Jewish yearning, my own personal yearning, ritualized yearning, um, that manifests as sort of in a speculative element. So in um, various stories Jewishly, like there's stories about yearning for God, yearning for Olam Haba, so like the world to come. There's various frameworks for thinking about yearning, and I was thinking about how that works when you have like actual people who are in messy relationships with this sort of idealized or speculative element um, that is like trying to build sort of this utopic version. And the other part that the other question that really was driving this was like, what is our responsibility to each other? Like, can we yearn for something and still treat each other well in the present? So, um, first I had to live through a bunch of experiences. Then I took time to write about other things. And then I started writing these about 2 years ago in earnest when I was in undergrad and taking writing workshops and trying out a little bit more narrative format. And as I revised, I learned a lot about what how I feel about those questions, how I feel about intra-community dynamics and patterns, and found that it was very meaningful to be thinking about the place where I am and the mystical imaginings of place that can show up in modern Jewish community, and how we theorize um, about you know like places like the old country, and like when the meaning of diaspora is so specific to a cultural context, um so what if the speculative element was not in another place but in like Michigan, where I'm from. So then the question was like, how would I the kind of narrative question was like, if I hadn't changed in my ways, where would I be at in a mystical future as like an old person reflecting on, like, if I still contain those patterns. So that's why it's like an older voice, even though, that's not my personal experience, but just kind of playing with the speculative as a way to look into those forms of yearning and wishes for old age, or wishes for love, or wishes for God, and what those mean.
Mm. Those are such interesting questions that you're asking. I'm also interested in this like seemingly institutionalized yearning through like religion and culture, because yearning, like I think when we use it, it's very often just person to person. So understanding how that yearning can also relate to like bigger yearnings, that is so interesting. Thank you for sharing. A second question that I have is in the editor's note, I noted that your piece explores the space that a religious and cultural vocabulary holds for love. So how do you think the relationship between a community that a language comes from and love, specifically queer love, is realized in the specific use of that language?
Yeah, I mean, I think this cycle and the work it comes out of is very invested in like explorations of Jewish gender, and what that means culturally within specific like ethnic and racial and like experiences. So like for me, being like a white Ashkenazi Jew, so like Eastern European origin, um, like the ways that gender show up for me might be different than um, like from literally any other combination of identity. So the inherent queerness in my expression of my gender is very tied to that Jewish expression. And so this piece is interested in like interpersonal relationship dynamics in that specific context, um and also based on like real people in Jewish community, and also based on conglomeration. Like there's not like 1-to-1 ratio, but yeah, that those ideas about love I think are very culturally specific. And also, I'm not in a vacuum. Like I'm very influenced by like concepts of love in a contemporary sense that come out of like more of like an abolitionist theoretical framework. Like I've been just started reading Bell Hooks's All About Love, and I'm like, this really resonates. This idea that it's about how we treat each other, and less about just a feeling. And so that question is like, what is yearning realized ritually rather than what is yearning just as a sensation? And that feels like emotion, as it being more than an emotion, is something that I was really trying to articulate here.
Mm, thank you, thank you. I actually I have a copy of All About Love waiting for me on campus at
Nice.
the library. So perhaps after reading it, I think like if I revisit your poem after that, it'll be a different experience that I'm looking forward to. Am I frozen for all of you?
Your video's frozen, but I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Um, well, good thing that we're at the end of our reading when I froze. Yeah, this is better than freezing in the middle, I guess. So thank you everybody so much for being here with us today. If you haven't read issue 3 yet, please do so. The other works in the issue are also very beautiful and wonderful, and it would mean a lot to the entire team for you to check it out. Follow our readers on social media, keep up with what they're up to because they're very cool people with beautiful minds. And I don't know exactly when we're going to open issue 4 submissions. but we will. I think we might be taking new staff members, question mark. Follow us on social media and we will tell you everything that we want to tell you. And yes, readers, if you want to drop anything, any links in the chat, please feel free to do so. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, everybody. This was a wonderful time.